Welcome to the AmericanaMusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today on AmericanaMusic.com, we have Alaina Stacey, formerly part of the country trio Maybe April, which garnered accolades from Rolling Stone and Billboard. Alaina has created collections of 19 songs and 3 separate EPs titled Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Her EP, Dusk, releases this Friday, July 18th. We are excited to have her on our show. Welcome, Alaina.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Alaina, can you talk a little bit about where you grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. Love to talk about that. I grew up in Chicago, born and raised. My parents actually bought their house in 1986, I think, and they're still there. So it's a very special place to me. It's where I got married on the street there. I loved growing up in Chicago. I had a really rich music community there. Folks from grade school and high school and beyond, a bunch of artsy kids making music. And that really helped foster and encourage this awesome life that I get to live. I loved living in Chicago.
I've never been there, but it's like my number one place I need to go next.
I'm sure people have said this, but go in the summer, not the winter.
When you were 10 years old, you took a road trip with your dad.
Yes.
And that made you fall in love with country music. Can you talk a little bit about that trip and the influence it had on you today musically?
My parents are both musicians and my brothers and everyone, but my dad, his job, he was a lawyer, and so he was very busy a lot growing up, and so for each of us, when we turned 10, he would take us on an individual trip. So when I was 10, we went out west, Four Corners area. Growing up in Chicago, at the time, I think there was one country music station, and I didn't know any country music at all. And then we were out west, and I think it was either Brad Paisley or Rascal Flatts or, some of that early 2000s pop country, that commercial country, and I just was so taken in by the lyrics mostly. I think it was just, hearing songs that you could really hear the lyrics and really understand the stories they were telling, and you could have a funny song or a nostalgic song or a sad song, just everything. It was like opened up this whole world of storytelling and music that I hadn't really been exposed to much yet. Just immediately fell in love driving. We had a blue PT Cruiser was our rental car out there. So I just remember it had a convertible. So we would just drive around in the blue convertible PT Cruiser. Got this whole world of country music opened up to me. It was really special. Lucky to have parents who encouraged me branching out, learning new styles of music.
What a cool story. I just love that. The imagery of you guys with the top down.
Saltwater taffies in the dash. It was...
Oh, that's great. That's great. You are also an actress, and you had the full intent of staying in Chicago, I read, and acting. What was the turning point for you that you said, I want to move to Nashville and write songs?
I loved acting. It gave me a whole new outlet for performance. I love performing. But I think just growing up in such a musical environment as I did, there was kind of no question that was really where I was going to end up, in music somewhere. I met my former bandmates in Nashville. In high school, I started going to Nashville just to do some songwriting, and then I went to a camp there called Grammy Camp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I met my 2 friends there. We ended up forming Maybe April, our country trio. I think just having a little bit of a pull to Nashville, whereas it just felt like the perfect timing that I had this connection with these 2 women, and that we were going to move to Nashville and we were going to pursue this music career, and the 2 of them were a year older, so they were already there. It gave me a little bit of a home base. There wasn't really a question that it was going to be music, and I get to act a little on stage, so I get the best of both worlds.
I grew up in the art painting world. My dad painted. I was heavily into that growing up. I have always felt like not just art, but all of the arts, in a lot of ways, that they kind of, if you have some basis of some art form, that they kind of cross over some in different ways.
Totally, yeah. Although I wish my art crossed over into visual art. I could draw a stick figure and that's about it. I think that definitely happens. My youngest brother, he's the only one in the family who didn't ever pursue any type of musical career. Mm-hmm. But he is a hip hop dancer and a cartoonist and an artist. So even within our family, there's some crossover between us.
Yeah, self-expression.
Yes, absolutely.
Some of my favorite albums are concept albums, like Leon Russell's Carney and Amy Mann's The Forgotten Arm, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Heart Club Band of the Beatles, and Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl Ballads. When artists make albums, they usually try to make it cohesive, I think, for the most part, in some form. But I really believe that concept albums are kind of the way to go today, because if you're going to go through all that effort of making an album, the concept album that you have, Dawn, Day, Dusk, can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to make a series of concept albums? Because I think it's a really cool idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a kind of long journey. I started recording some of these songs during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, because I wasn't touring as much with my old trio, and I had been wanting to getting into solo stuff anyway. And so I started recording these songs, and I realized there were more and more songs I wanted to do, and suddenly I had too many for an album. Aside from that issue, I also felt like, these were songs that I had written over a long period of time. Some of them I had dug back into the archives, and a couple of them I wrote in high school, and then a few are newer, an adult, after living a little life. So I had that problem, but that situation of having these songs over such a long period of time. And then I also had, growing up in Chicago, raised on more of the like rock, Americana, and then like some pop stuff, gospel, and then discovering country music and really diving into pop country music, and then discovering bluegrass, more of the country Americana stuff. I've kind of went on this whole journey of genres that I think influenced me over all that time as well. I kind of felt a struggle of putting myself into a box of I am a country artist, or I'm an Americana artist, or I'm an indie rock artist, or whatever the label is. I was struggling with fitting all of these songs into one cohesive genre sound. I kind of took a look at all the songs and listened through and noticed some themes that were sort of in an arc of a beginning to an end, a dawn to a dusk, a morning to night, a beginning of your life to the end of your life. And so I, along with a friend of mine, kind of came up with this idea of grouping the songs not by genre necessarily, but more sonically and by emotion. And, if you close your eyes, where are you when you're listening, and what are you thinking, and what colors are you seeing? And, just kind of having that more of an idea of the time of day and also the time of your life. Dawn, literally the beginning of the day, but also dawn being the dawn of our lifetime as a human being, and all the way through to the dusk of our life when things are ending down, which of course I'm not there yet. I don't know, but, sort of that idea, the passage of time through a day, but also through a lifetime.
That's really cool. I like how you said you incorporated the colors, like really gave a lot of thought to that during those different times. That's really cool.
And interesting because I didn't set out to do this. I didn't set out to create this series. I fell upon it as I was struggling to find my place as a solo artist. And I think Americana music is a great place to do this kind of thing because, there are some genres that are so, pop country has that pop country sound, and, hip hop has a hip hop sound. And there's I think Americana has such it's storytelling, and it's,
yes,
expressing, figuring out how to grapple with this life that we're living. And so I think Americana is a really great place to experiment with these sounds.
Very cool. Yes, I agree with that. A lot of those flavors coming together. The writing nerd in me loves the alliteration of the dawn, day, dusk. Your songwriting, I feel like it's really on point. You did do some co-writing?
Yeah, did a bit of both. I am a writer on every song. Some of them I wrote by myself, especially the earlier ones before I moved to Nashville, before I really knew about co-writing. There's a kind of combination of songs I wrote myself, and then with a few writing partners that I write with pretty regularly. So that was fun too, to kind of pick out which songs were going to be part of this project and to share that with those folks that I wrote with, and then also to give life to these little songs I wrote when I was 16 years old.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool. Before I start talking about some of the songs from your third EP, I want to talk about the first song for the series, which the title grabbed me. Erickson's Psychosocial Stages, which I'm nerded out on that a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about that song? It's a cool title.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. My dad, when I told him, he said, "Are you really going to call it that?" I was like, yeah. When I moved to Nashville, I moved straight out of high school, so I didn't go to college. And then after a while, I decided I might want to learn a few more things. And so I started going to community college there. I got really interested in psychology, and so I took a few psychology courses. And that song I wrote, actually, as well as one of the songs in the upcoming EP, I also wrote for a psychology class. Erickson's Psychosocial Stages, the assignment was do an artistic expression assignment of some psychological theory or something. So it was very broad. And so, of course, I had to write a song. song. We had just learned about the psychosocial stages that Erik Erikson theorized that each person goes through their lifetime. So the song, it's kind of two-part. One, it's each verse and chorus is a different stage. If you listen, each one is symbolic of a different stage, but then also it's sort of a thank you to my parents as well for doing what I think was a great job raising us. Kind of the idea that, you go through life really needing your parents and really needing that support and then pulling away. And hopefully if you had support in your childhood, then you can venture out and be independent, but always have that safe space to come back to with your parents. And so it's also kind of a little thank you to my parents, as well as a little secret psychology assignment throughout the verses and chorus.
The song Think of You, which is the first song on your EP, Dusk, and it says, every time I hear Tangled Up in Blue, I think of you. For our listeners, probably many will be familiar, but just for those who aren't, it's a Bob Dylan song. Can you talk a little bit about that song?
Absolutely. So that is a very near and dear true story to my heart, about an ex that I had in Nashville. And specifically, with that Bob Dylan reference, we had this argument over who was the greatest living songwriter, Bob Dylan or Tom Waits. My ex would argue for Bob Dylan, and I argued for Tom Waits. We never came to terms on it. We still disagree to this day. I've also heard that Bob Dylan is very serious about his songs, and that if he even hears a Bob Dylan reference, he might sue you. So Bob, if you're listening, please don't sue me. I wrote that song with my friend Sam Gyllenhaal, and we were kind of talking about just the way that when you have a particularly deep breakup, that you really see that person in everywhere that you go. You've touched every corner of the town that you live in, and Nashville, it's not a small town, but it feels like one sometimes.
It does.
Yeah. And so I think just sort of came out of that feeling of that looking back, and that no matter where you turn, see that person everywhere you go. And it's sad, but a little warm, but a little kind of that nostalgia of looking back and remembering the good times, but also the hard times. And I think the really fun thing that I'm really proud of with the song, of how it turned out, is that that one is the one that I was like, oh, this is going on Dusk, because I feel like it sounds like the sun going down and taking a walk and just like feeling all your feelings. And so I'm really proud of the way that we kind of captured that like golden hour nostalgic sound.
No, it's super cool. Super cool. I like that one a lot. Your song Insomnia, which ironically I feel moves like a lullaby a little bit, especially the guitar and the melody. Can you talk a little bit about creating that song?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually the other song that I wrote for my other psychology class. I wrote it actually in Brooklyn. I was on tour and staying in a friend's tiny little apartment, and I wrote the song sitting on the floor in if you could call it a kitchen, it was a kitchenette really, in a tiny little Brooklyn apartment. It occurred to me as I was thinking about all these songs, well, no wonder I wrote a song about insomnia. I was like sleeping on an air mattress that ended up on the floor the next morning. Usually I write songs that are quite true to myself, but I'm a really excellent sleeper, so I don't often deal with insomnia. But for that moment, laying in bed, just like staring at the ceiling, like, why am I still awake? Why am I still awake? It's not even there's something wrong. It's just your thoughts racing and you just can't put them away. Kind of has that lullaby feel with the melody. I think it's in like 6/8 or whatever. So that one was fun too, to get a little bit darker with that song as well, because especially coming from my past country trio that was a little bit brighter and more country, and this was fun to get a little dark with that one.
I'm glad that you've kind of answered some of those questions that I've already had. I was wondering where the psychology background was. Knew it was in there somewhere.
Yes, less of a background and more of a little dipping my toes in, because I didn't end up in psychology, but I did really love learning about it, and a lot of great song material.
I love blues feel of Late Night Lies. Did you write that one knowing that you were going to put out EP Dusk, or was that already?
Yeah, that was one I chose for a project that I didn't know was going to be Dusk. I wrote that with my friend Sam Gyllenhaal and our friend Brian McKenna. That was just a fun one to write. Brian came to us with the chord progression, and we were like, ooh, that's kind of sexy. And actually, as far as my contribution to where my headspace was when we were writing that, was about the same ex as Think of You, actually. It was a time.
Yeah. Got to get as many songs as possible.
My dad is always telling my husband, you treat her too well. She doesn't have enough song material. You need to, just make her worry a little bit.
That's amazing. I'm going to go back a little. So your song Snowing in Nashville, which is on the second EP of that series, that song has some really great writing. But when you say you're the kind of cold that bites.
Growing up in Chicago, we know about the cold that bites. Born out of a true story as well. The first year that I moved to Nashville, I knew it didn't snow that often. And that first year we had a giant snow and ice storm. In Nashville, they're not that prepared for the snow and the ice. And so we were stuck in our house for 3 days, feeling like, man, I did this. I brought this cold here from Chicago because of my poor 18-year-old heart breaking and making the snow fall.
It was a great, I love it too when people take, things that are kind of visual or these stories and blend it in with the emotional and you did that so well in that song. It's really cool.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, that was a fun one to write. And that was an old one. I was, I think, 18 maybe when I wrote that one.
That's pretty impressive. I remember living in Nashville and there being a huge car pileup on I-40 because of it snowed. It was either an inch or two.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe not even.
In the song Stand, it's a very cool production there. And I like how it starts out with just a banjo and vocal, and then it moves into a swell of the piano and electric guitar. It's really cool. Can you talk a little bit about the creation of that song?
Yeah, absolutely. That was really a special moment in the studio. It's a very personal song to me. It's a song about my grandfather who passed from Alzheimer's.
Oh.
I tried to see the world a little bit through his eyes and what it must feel like to just totally be losing grip of reality and your memory and the people that you love. So on a personal level, that was an emotional one to me. It was from high school that I wrote. I think I was 16 or 17, and my grandfather had already passed at this point when I was recording it. It was much later. Being in the studio for it, it doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's just so this mass of everybody being exactly locked in to the feeling that is happening. And that, of course, Nashville players are so excellent. They were going to knock it out of the park technically, but also in that moment, I was singing scratch vocals, and just as the banjo started, then everybody joining in perfectly. When my producer Evan went back to edit it and get my vocals on it, he realized we weren't really perfectly on time with the banjo because we were just feeling so much in the moment with the lyrics and the feelings of it. So it ended up, he just said, well, who cares? We'll just not be perfectly in time. And
it's a very cool feel. Sometimes you just got to go with it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So it was just this special moment where Todd, who was playing the banjo, he and I really locked in, and then everybody else came in at the exactly right moment, and we just sang through the whole thing. And it was a really, really special time on that one specifically, which I was glad for because that one is so very personal to me. And so
I do have to say your songs are a lot more mature than mine were as a teenager. Well, Alaina, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. It's just been a pleasure having you today. I really, really enjoyed your 3 EPs, Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Encourage everybody to go listen to Dawn and Day and reserve Dusk for when it comes out. Yeah, just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And I loved listening through the podcast, and thanks for giving a voice to all these artists. We're all just trying to do the thing, and I really appreciate this. Has been so fun to get to talk about the music and to get to chat with you. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to share with you something special, something I've been working on lately. It's called American Music Town. It's not set to even come out until September of this year, but follow the show so that you won't miss an episode. Here's a short clip. Today, we have the honor of interviewing Fame Studios president Rodney Hall. In an Alabama town near the Tennessee state line, Fame Studios, founded by Rick Hall, was where the Muscle Shoals craze all began. At the time, Aretha Franklin was recently dropped by her label and found her groove at Fame. It's where Mustang Sally was recorded by Wilson Pickett, Percy Sledge recorded When a Man Loves a Woman, and Tell Mama was recorded by Etta James. Today, Americana artists like Jason Isbell, Turnpike Troubadours, Maggie Rose, Alison Krauss, and Grace Potter have all recorded there to obtain some of the Fame magic. It's a privilege to welcome Rodney Hall. Welcome, Rodney.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Sarah.
Rodney, tell us a little bit about, I know I went through some of it, but some of the history of Muscle Shoals and the recording studio that your dad started.
Oh, wow. It's, that's 65 years. How much time we got?
Right.
Yeah, it all started in the late 50s, early 60s. He was a songwriter, and he and a guy named Billy Sherrill and Tom Stafford were partners, and Billy went on to run Columbia Records and did George Jones and all kind of people, Johnny Cash and Tammy Wynette and so forth. But anyway, they started writing songs and had some success with George Jones and with Roy Orbison and some other people. And from that kind of gave them the the idea that they might be able to make money in the music business. So he started a little publishing company and recording studio and started recording artists and found his niche was in black music and started doing R&B and soul music with Arthur Alexander first, who had a big hit, and then Jimmy Hughes. And from there, just kind of snowballed into, everyone from Wilson Pickett to Otis Redding, Little Richard, Lou Rawls, Etta James, Aretha Franklin, Candy State, Clarence Carter. Just it goes on and on and on. It's a mountain of music has been recorded here, and it's still going on, still doing it today.
So I saw that recently you guys have been adding a lot of updates as well to the studio.
We have in the last couple of years, we've remodeled our Studio B control room and brought in a SSL 6000E and a bunch of new equipment and a bunch of old equipment too. We revamped the original console that was in there, which was a Universal Audio built console, custom built console. And then recently we've opened up an immersive mix room, spatial audio, and that's off site, so it's not at our building. It's in across the river in Florence, but it's a great studio, great room. We're excited about it as well.
That's really cool. So how did the transition go with you, running the studio?
Well, it was slow and painful. I graduated from college and got my master's degree and was in Huntsville selling computers, thinking I was going to do the tech thing and be in the computer world, and got over there. I was selling to NASA and Boeing and to a corporate computer sales gig. And, I was enjoying that, but then I saw that there was an opportunity for someone to come run the studio, and just saw the opportunity and realized, God, how many people would kill to have that gig. And I've got the wide open door, obviously, because it's my family. So I bit the bullet, took a huge pay cut, and came over here and did that, and then got into publishing and started working in the publishing world. And we started having a lot of success with that and had 2 or 3 Song of the Years. And then my brother and I bought my dad out of the publishing company, and he was ready to cut back on what he was doing. So we bought that, and that was in 99, and have taken that forward over the years. And it's just evolved into, as my dad eased out, I was taking more responsibilities. And then obviously he passed away in 2018, and it all kind of fell on my shoulders, and mine and my mom. She's still here. She's 83. She still does our books and does the royalties and all that. So, and my brother Mark is still involved somewhat as well.
Here's a short clip from next week's interview with Grayson Jenkins.
Yeah, I think it's changed a lot over time. Obviously, I've been writing songs for 10 years plus now. When I first started writing, it was therapeutic, and it still is, but it was very much like, I'm hurting. I want to describe this situation so that I feel better, is kind of looking back what it was. And gradually over time, I've started to just latch on to things that I find interesting. So like a turn of phrase or a random conversation with a stranger or a friend, or something somebody else says, or something I've experienced in my travels. It's usually something that just feels, it's like if this, right in the middle is life, I want to find the things that are kind of just outside of that a little bit to shed a light on. Additionally, I like to think of songwriting as a way to take a single moment and put the microscope on it and just kind of explode that and those feelings, and really think about, I think somebody like Jason Isbell is somebody that I look up to in that way, and he can take this minute kind of situation and experience and just explode the imagery to where you feel so viscerally those experiences. That said, that's kind of what I'm working towards. And so for me, it's telling stories, but I'm glad you mentioned simplicity, because that's something that I've tried to fight off in the past, of being more ethereal and more experimental. But I think at my core, I feel most passionate whenever I am being honest and to the point, saying things in a way that my dad or grandfather or grandmother or these people in the community that I grew up in would say things, just kind of to the point, but with a little bit of character, a half grin or a wink, or, I love those little idioms and things like that say something, but they say it kind of in a unique way.
Thank Thank you so much for listening to AmericanaMusic.com podcast. Be sure to go to AmericanaMusic.com and find playlists of the Americana artists we've interviewed here. Also, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform.